They said he'd end up in jail. Then he became their judge, Hook. Have you ever been told you'd never amount to anything? That your destiny was already written in stone? Well, I was once that kid everyone had given up on. The teachers, the police, even my own family looked at me and saw only one future: a jail cell waiting with my name on it. But today I'm sitting behind a different kind of bench. The very people who once handcuffed me now stand before me and say, "Your Honor," or stay with me to discover how a juvenile delinquent from the wrong side of town ended up becoming the judge who changed an entire community. Appresentação and CTA Initial. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where we share stories that prove your past doesn't have to dictate your future. Before I reveal how I went from facing a judge to becoming one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Why? Because just like I needed someone to believe in me when no one else would, these stories of incredible life transformations might be exactly what you or someone you know needs to hear today. Now, let's get into how my life took the most unexpected turn. Conteúdo. The metal handcuffs bit into my wrists as Officer Reynolds pushed me into the back of his patrol car. It was my third arrest that year, and I was only 16. Through the rearview mirror, I could see him shaking his head. "Thompson, at this rate, you'll be in state prison by 18. What a waste." I remember staring out the window at my neighborhood, Riverdale Heights, though there was nothing Heights about it. Just row after row of dilapidated buildings, corner stores with bulletproof glass, and empty lots where kids like me learned life's hardest lessons. My mother had worked 2 jobs since I was 7. My father? He'd been serving a 20-year sentence since I was 9. The streets raised me more than any parent did. By 13, I was running with a crew that specialized in boosting cars. By 15, I'd graduated to breaking and entering. Now at 16, I was facing charges that could get me tried as an adult. As Officer Reynolds drove me to the Juvenile Detention Center, my second home at this point, I had no idea that 12 years later, he would be addressing me as Your Honor. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night in juvie was different. As I sat on the cold metal bench, waiting for processing, an older man in a suit walked in. He wasn't a typical public defender, too well-dressed, too confident. He looked straight at me. "Marcus Thompson?" he asked. I nodded, suspicious. "I'm Judge Robert Gaines. I'm not your judge, but I've seen your file cross my desk too many times." I rolled my eyes. Here was another lecture coming. "You've got one of the highest IQs we've seen come through this system," he continued. That caught me off guard. No one had ever mentioned my IQ before. "You're facing serious charges this time, son, but I see something in you that reminds me of myself at your age." I scoffed. "You? A judge? You expect me to believe you were ever like me?" He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a faded tattoo, the same symbol my neighborhood crew wore. My jaw dropped. "Riverdale Heights, 1978, he said. "I was headed exactly where you are. Then someone gave me a chance, and I'm here to do the same for you." That night changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. Judge Gaines made me an offer. Instead of juvie, I would enter an intensive intervention program. I'd have to finish high school, attend weekly mentoring sessions with him, and complete community service at the courthouse. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him. "Because the system is designed to process you, not save you," he said. "And because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted behind bars." The next day, instead of being assigned to a cell, I was sitting in a real classroom for the first time in months. The program Judge Gaines put me in was brutal, stricter than juvie in some ways. I had to check in daily, maintain perfect attendance, and meet academic standards that seemed impossible at first. The other kids in my neighborhood thought I'd gone soft. My crew stopped calling. In those early weeks, I almost quit a dozen times. What kept me going was pure spite. I wanted to prove I could do it, even if I didn't believe there was really a different future waiting for me. Judge Gaines met with me every Friday afternoon. At first, our sessions were awkward. I answered in monosyllables, convinced this was all some kind of trick. "You remind me of myself," he said during our third meeting. "Too smart for your own good, too angry to see a way out." There is no way out," I said. "Not from Riverdale." "I'm sitting right here, aren't I?" he countered. Slowly, week by week, I started to trust him. He wasn't trying to change who I was. He was showing me how to channel my strength differently. The same strategic thinking I used to plan break-ins, he showed me how to apply to schoolwork. The charisma I used to lead my crew, he taught me to use in debate club. 6 months into the program, something shifted. I'd maintained perfect attendance, and my grades had gone from D's and F's to mostly B's. One teacher even suggested I consider college, a word no one had ever directed at me before. But real change isn't a straight line. In my 10th month of the program, my old crew leader, Darnell, approached me after school. "One job," he said. "Big score. Enough to get out of this hellhole." The timing couldn't have been worse. My mother had just lost one of her jobs and we were facing eviction. The big score Darnell was offering could solve everything, or land me in prison for years. I almost said yes. I stood on that corner for nearly an hour, weighing my options. In the end, what stopped me wasn't fear of getting caught. It was the thought of sitting across from Judge Gaines and seeing the disappointment in his eyes. Instead of meeting Darnell that night, I went to Judge Gaines's office. It was after hours, but he was still there, reviewing cases. "I need help," I admitted, for the first time in my life. "My mom's going to lose our apartment." Without hesitation, he picked up the phone. By the next day, my mother had a job interview at the courthouse as an administrative assistant. She got the job, and we kept our apartment. But more importantly, I learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, something no one in Riverdale had ever taught me. My high school graduation was a small affair. My mother was there, beaming with pride in her courthouse uniform. Judge Gaines sat beside her, looking just as proud. After the ceremony, he handed me an envelope. "I pulled some strings," he said. "It's a scholarship application for City College. The deadline was last month, but they'll accept yours." I stared at him in disbelief. "College? Me? Why not you?" he challenged. That summer, I began working at the courthouse, filing papers and running errands. I saw firsthand how the system worked, and how it often failed kids, just like me. I saw overworked public defenders, overwhelmed judges, and a parade of young men from my neighborhood, all traveling the same path I'd nearly taken. When fall came, I started classes at City College, still working part-time at the courthouse. I chose pre-law, inspired not just by Judge Gaines, but by the glaring need I saw every day for people who understood both sides of the system. College wasn't easy. I still didn't quite fit in. I was older than most freshmen, with a background they couldn't relate to. But the skills that had helped me survive Riverdale, resilience, quick thinking, reading people, served me well in academia too. Judge Gaines continued to mentor me throughout college. When I struggled with a class, he found me a tutor. When I doubted myself, he reminded me of how far I'd come. And when I was accepted to state law school with a partial scholarship, he helped me navigate student loans for the rest. Law school was a different world entirely. I went from being one of the smartest kids in my community college to being surrounded by students from privileged backgrounds who'd been groomed for this path since birth. My first year, I nearly failed out. The concepts weren't the problem. It was the culture, the unwritten rules no one had taught me. Again, it was Judge Gaines who saved me. He connected me with a study group of other first-generation law students and found alumni from backgrounds similar to mine who could help me navigate the hidden curriculum of law school. By my third year, I'd found my footing. I specialized in juvenile justice, determined to help kids who'd been in my position. For my clinical experience, I worked at the Public Defender's Office in Riverdale Heights, representing teens who reminded me so much of myself it was sometimes painful. The day I passed the bar exam was the second proudest day of my life. The first came 3 years later, when after working as a public defender, then a prosecutor, I was appointed to fill a vacancy as a juvenile court judge. The irony wasn't lost on me when I entered the courtroom for the first time in my new role. 10 years earlier, I'd stood on the other side of a bench just like this one, certain my life was over. Now I was the one with the power to change trajectories. My first week on the bench, a case came before me that stopped me cold. A 16-year-old boy charged with breaking and entering, just like I had been. His name was Jamal, and his file could have been mine a decade earlier. Same neighborhood, same broken home, same intelligent eyes burning with defiance. Officer Reynolds, now Sergeant Reynolds, was the arresting officer. He did a double take when he saw me on the bench, his face a mix of shock and something else I couldn't quite read. As I reviewed Jamal's case, I thought about what Judge Gaines would do. The system wanted me to process this kid, move him along the assembly line toward incarceration. But I saw his potential, hidden beneath layers of armor built by a life of disappointment. "Jamal," I said, "your record suggests you're on a path to prison, but I see something else in you." The boy looked up, surprised to be addressed directly. "I'm offering you an alternative program," I continued. "It's stricter than juvenile detention in many ways. You'll have to attend school daily, maintain passing grades, and meet with a mentor weekly. That mentor will be me." Murmurs filled the courtroom. This was not standard procedure. "Why would you do that?" Jamal asked, echoing the same question I'd asked Judge Gaines years before. I leaned forward. "Because I sat exactly where you're sitting now, and because I believe talent like yours shouldn't be wasted behind bars." After court adjourned, Sergeant Reynolds approached me. "Your Honor," he said, the title still awkward on his lips. "I have to say, I never thought that I'd end up here," I finished for him. "I've arrested hundreds of kids from Riverdale," he said. "You're the first one I've ever called Your Honor," I nodded. "Then perhaps we need to reconsider what's possible for the others, too." That conversation with Sergeant Reynolds led to something unexpected, a partnership. Together, we created a diversion program specifically for first-time offenders from Riverdale Heights. He identified kids who might benefit. I found mentors, educational resources, and job opportunities. Judge Gaines came out of retirement to help us build the program. We called it Second Chance Initiative. In its first year, we diverted 30 young offenders from incarceration. By year 3, that number had grown to over 100, and our recidivism rate was half the national average. Jamal was our first success story. Like me, he struggled at first, nearly dropping out multiple times. But with consistent support and someone who refused to give up on him, he graduated high school and went on to community college. 5 years into my judgeship, I received an invitation that brought my journey full circle. The law school I'd attended was holding a conference on juvenile justice reform, and they wanted me to be the keynote speaker. As I stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces, including Judge Gaines in the front row, I felt the weight of my journey. 10 years ago, I began. I was a statistic waiting to happen. A juvenile delinquent from Riverdale Heights with 3 arrests by age 16. Every societal indicator predicted I would end up in prison. Instead, I stand before you today as Judge Marcus Thompson. I paused, making eye contact with Judge Gaines. The difference between those two destinies wasn't my intelligence, which I had all along. It wasn't some inherent moral superiority. It was that one person chose to see beyond my circumstances to my potential. One person decided that my life was worth investing in, even when all evidence suggested it was a lost cause. As I continued my speech, I noticed Officer, now Captain, Reynolds slip into the back of the auditorium. He'd never been my biggest supporter, but our work together had built a grudging mutual respect. Our juvenile justice system processes thousands of young people every year, I continued. We know, statistically, that incarceration increases the likelihood of adult criminal behavior. We know that a single juvenile detention stay decreases high school graduation rates by 13%. And yet, we continue to funnel our most vulnerable youth into a system designed to punish rather than rehabilitate. I gestured to the success stories of our program displayed on screens around the auditorium. These young people aren't exceptions. They're proof of what's possible when we choose to invest in potential rather than punish past mistakes. Every one of them was told, like I was, that their destiny was predetermined. Every one of them proved that narrative wrong. Oh, after the speech, Captain Reynolds approached me at the reception. "I owe you an apology," he said, extending his hand. "I spent years seeing kids like you as problems to be contained, not potential to be developed." I shook his hand. "We all have our blind spots, Captain. The important thing is that you're seeing differently now." That conference led to national attention for our program. Soon, judges and police departments from across the country were visiting Riverdale Heights, once known only for its crime rates, to learn how we'd achieved such remarkable results. The most meaningful moment, however, came 3 years later. I was presiding over a custody hearing when I noticed a familiar face in my courtroom. Darnell, my old crew leader, was there seeking custody of his son after completing a prison rehabilitation program. Our eyes met, and for a moment I was 16 again, standing on that corner, weighing his offer against my future. Now I held his future in my hands. After reviewing his case thoroughly, I granted him provisional custody, with conditions similar to those Judge Gaines had once given me: regular check-ins, parenting classes, and stable employment. As he was leaving, Darnell approached the bench. "Marcus," he said quietly, "who'd have thought you'd end up here?" I smiled. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Darnell. Even you. Especially you." Last month marked my 10th year on the bench. In that decade, over 500 young people from Riverdale Heights have completed our Second Chance program. Nearly 80% have graduated high school. More than half have pursued higher education or vocational training. Judge Gaines attended every one of our graduation ceremonies until he passed away 2 years ago. At his memorial service, the church was filled with his kids. Dozens of young men and women whose lives he'd transformed, just as he'd transformed mine. In his will, he left funds to establish a scholarship for Riverdale youth pursuing careers in public service. We named it the Gaines Second Chance Scholarship. Jamal, now a social worker, sits on the selection committee with me. Yesterday, a new juvenile case came across my desk. A 16-year-old girl, bright but troubled, arrested for the 3rd time this year. As I reviewed her file, I saw notes from her teachers about her exceptional intelligence and leadership potential, always followed by laments about her home situation and the bad crowd she'd fallen in with. When she enters my courtroom tomorrow, she won't see a judge who views her as a lost cause or another statistic. She'll see someone who recognizes her potential because he once stood in her shoes. And maybe, just maybe 10 years from now, she'll be the one proving everyone wrong. Because if there's one thing my journey has taught me, it's that the most powerful words in the English language might be these. They said I would never, but I did. Fechamento com CTA. This story, my story, is a testament to the power of second chances and the impact one person can have on someone else's life. I went from a kid handcuffed in the back of a police car to the judge who now helps other kids like me find their way. Never let anyone tell you what your future holds. You are the author of your own story. If you've been moved by this journey, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What obstacles have you overcome that others said you couldn't? Who was the Judge Gaines in your life who believed in you when no one else would? And if you haven't found that person yet, remember that sometimes you need to be your own biggest believer first. Don't forget to subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more stories that show how life can change in the most unexpected ways. If you know someone who needs to hear this message of hope and transformation, share this video with them. And if you'd like to see more stories about people who defied expectations, check out the video pinned in the first comment. Until next time, remember, your past may shape you, but it doesn't have to define you.